Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. If you're a raw beginner and you haven't sewn before, then this is the project for you. We're going to be making a lingerie bag or a wash bag that you can throw in your machine. You're going to learn how to put a zip in, how to do French seams, how to do French seams on box corners, and how to do top stitching. So come along and I'll show you how to make this really simple wash bag, lingerie bag, whatever you want to use it for. I have a completely different need for it. Come along. All we're going to be using today is a 35 centimetre or 14 inch regular dress zip and one piece of fabric. This piece of fabric is 110 by 43 centimetres or 42 by 17 inches. The only reason I'm making it this size is because it's what I happen to cut off my board, and I'm using the full width of the fabric. I've cut off the selvages though. So let's get started. This is going to be very simple. First thing we need to do is create a double hem for the top edge of our bag. It's just that the zip can be inserted nice and neatly. Alternative, you could go and overlock your edges. Turn your fabric around so that the printed side is faced down. So we've got the right side face down and the wrong side faced up. From the outside edge, we're going to measure 2.5 centimetres or 1 inch and mark a line across that. And you'll do the same at the other end of the fabric. Once you've done that, we're going to fold the raw edge over to the line and press it. And once you've folded that over once, using that raw edge, fold your fabric over again. You'll be able to feel that fabric underneath. This doesn't have to be perfect. This is a great beginner's project. If you've never sewn straight lines or folded fabric, this one will be perfect for you. And it's even going to be easy to install the zip. Okay, we've got a double fold here. Grab the other end of the fabric. Once again, this is the wrong side and this is the printed side or the pretty side. Fold the raw edge over to that drawn line. And then we can fold that over again. We'll sew straight down the edge there on both sides, and then we can put our zip in. It's just a single straight line all the way down. And we'll repeat for the other end. All right, we've got both of our short edges with the double fold stitched in place. Let's put our zip in. I'm going to draw some lines along here so that you know which is the outside of my fabric and which is the inside, because it's a bit difficult to see with this print. This is the outside or the pretty side, and we're going to mark the centre of our fabric. So fold this in half, mark the centre. I'm using pens that will either wash out or come out with the iron. And at the end of the day, what marks I leave on the fabric doesn't really matter, because this is only going to be a laundry bag. So I'm not really concerned about any marks left on the fabric later. Okay, we've marked the centre and mark the centre of your zip. So fold that in half from one end to the next and mark the centre. With the bumpy side, the side that's got the slider on it, faced down, we're going to line that up with the centre of our fabric, and you can pin or clip it in place. I'm not even going to use my double-sided tape today. I don't need to. It's one layer of fabric and one zip. It shouldn't shift too much. Okay, with that side done, let's open the zip. And we're going to put this side straight onto the other end. There's a centre marking here. Line up the two marks and clip that in place. I'll just turn that around. So this is a side I've already done. We've got the closed end of the zip over here, and I'm just going to clip the rest of the edges together. Like that. And that's ready to take to the machine and sew in place. Now you want to put a zipper foot on, or a narrow foot, so that you can get close to the zipper teeth. And we can sew both sides of the zip in place. Once that's done, you'll turn the fabric around to the right side. We're going to top stitch that fabric as well. I'll show you what to do at the machine. Place the end of your zip underneath your fabric. I've lined up my zipper foot as close as I can get to the edge of my zipper teeth and stitch this in place. When I get to the end where the zip slider is, I'm going to raise my presser foot, grab that slider and just move that out of the way. So my slide has been moved down here, and I'll continue on sewing until I get to the end of the tape. And then we can do the other side. So I'm going to start at the end that I've just come from, and the zip is partially closed along here, which is fine because the head is out of my way. Continue on. When I get to the zipper head, I'll raise my foot again, slide that out and continue sewing. We've got both sides of the zip installed. Now we need to top stitch. From here we're going to fold the back of the zip over, and we're just going to do a narrow top stitch right on the fabric, and that'll secure that in place and make it look nice and neat. And I'm just lining up the edge of my zipper foot with the fold in the fabric, and that'll keep me nice and straight. When you get to the end, separate the front and back, and we can do the same on the other side. And this time I'm using the other side of my foot as a guide. Once again, when I get to the other end, I'll just separate the front and back. And that is our zip installed. All right, close this up, and we've got our zip nicely finished at the top there. From here, we're going to fold the fabric at the top where the zipper teeth are, and you can pop a couple of clips in just at the top to have that sitting nice and evenly whilst you smooth out the fabric and find the centre at the bottom here. What we're going to do now is sew down the two side seams. On our side seams we're going to sew 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters. So in here, this is the wrong side, this is your printed side. We want the printed side faced out. I'm going to start from the top edge when I do that, because that way if the fabric distorts as I come down, I'm still going to have a nice neat fold at the bottom. Let's go and sew up the side seams. So we're only going to be using 1/4 inch seam, but I do just want to mention that if you're using a zip that is a little bit longer or your fabric is a little bit narrower, you just want to be really careful that you never sew over this area where the metal teeth are. So I'm well out of the way, it's not going to be a problem, but it's something that you want to look out for just in case you do have a different size zip or fabric. I'll start at the very top edge with a back stitch, and then my 1/4 inch seam all the way down. And flip it over and do the other side. Our side seams are done, and we've done a narrow 1/4 inch seam. For the purpose of this bag, I think our 1/4 inch seam is narrow enough, so I'm not going to trim that back any further. Let's open the bag. When you open your bag, leave your zipper head a couple of inches in from the outside edge so that you don't accidentally sew over it. Turn your bag inside out, poke out your corners, and press your edges so they sit nice and evenly on the side. All right, our bag is inside out and the edges have been pressed really well, and you might be able to see a faint outline of the raw edge of the fabric on the inside. So that for me is around about here. We need to cover those raw edges on the other side. So what we're going to do is sew a couple of millimeters or about 1/8 of an inch outside of that area. Once again, I'll start at the top, being careful not to sew over any metal bits. With the raw edge of my fabric here, I'm going to sew along here. I'm going to sew that all the way to the end. We'll do that on both sides. So this time around I'm doing a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch. Back stitch and continue on to the other end. And we'll repeat for the other side. Now you can actually be finished right here. You don't have to box corners or anything, but I did mention that we were going to do some boxed cornered French seams or French seam box corners, I'm not sure. We'll turn this bag the right way out. You want to give this a really good press again. Poke out the ends and the corners. All right, everything's been pressed and I've got my nice neat edges on the outside. Now you will see on the outside here I've got some wispy bits. I actually forgot to neaten up my edges before I did the other seam. So before you do the final seam, you just want to make sure you have no wispy bits on the edge of your fabric. If you do, it doesn't really matter, you can just trim them off. Of course, if you're working on a garment, you would neaten up your edges first. There are 2 ways that you can do box corners on a bag with French seams. I'm going to show you the easy way first. Go back to the inside of your bag and say I want my bag to have 1 inch or 2.5 centimetre box corners. From the stitching line, I would measure that 1 inch, and from the fold line, I would measure the same. And I'll show you that from the other side as well. So we've got the fold line and the stitching line. And what you would do is spread your fabric apart, find those corners and sew on that line. And that's it. You can just leave it exactly like that. You don't have to trim off the ears, just leave it exactly as it is. You'll have your box corners and it'll be nice and neat. That's the easiest way to do them. But there is another way. If we go back to the outside of the bag and we'll make the same measurement, but this time we're taking the measurement from the outside edge and to the bottom edge. We'll do that on both sides. And we'll flip it over and mark the other side as well. Because this is a beginner's project, we're going to mark all the corners. Okay, so this is the outside of our bag. I've got all the corners marked. Bring the edges together and line that up so that you've got a nice straight line there. Pin that in place and we'll sew straight across here. On this side we'll do the same. Let's go do that. So we're just going to stitch straight on that marked line. And repeat for the other side. So now we have a couple of little ears on the outside of our bag. We can't leave it like this. I mentioned earlier if you wanted to do your box corners on the inside of the bag, this is how it would look. You would turn it back to the inside and it would just sit like that with the little flaps on the side. Because we've got these ears on the outside and we want to do the other French seam technique, we're going to cut off this triangle here. So we're going to cut close to the stitching line, just under 1/4 of an inch. And we'll turn this inside out one more time. And down at the bottom where you've got the straight edge from your box corners, line that up nice and evenly. and we can go and sew this with a 1/4 inch seam. The folded fabric underneath should be less than a 1/4 inch. We'll sew a 1/4 inch or a little bit more if that makes you more comfortable. All right, so these are definitely our last 2 seams. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. And we're done. So that's neatened up the box corners on the inside of our bag. Let's turn this the right way out. And there's our corners at the bottom there. So you can't see any of the raw edges along the bottom, and you can't see them on the inside either. And you also don't have those little triangle ears. So it's up to you whether you want to have ears inside your bag or not. It does actually look nicer this way. And there you have it, a perfectly usable laundry bag or lingerie bag. All right, what do you think? It is a very simple project to make. If you've never sewn before and you just want to try all of these different elements, then I think this will work for you. And once you've finished sewing it up, you've got a perfectly usable bag for your washing machine. I'm not going to be using mine for lingerie. I've actually got another use for mine. Last week I showed you how to make up a heap of unlined zippered pouches using sample swatch fabric like this. I've overlocked all the edges and discovered I can't get the rest of the paper off the fabric, so what I'm going to do is throw these in the wash because I don't want to go to the trouble of lining them once I've overlocked them. So I'm throwing all of these in the wash. Can close up the fabric, that way any paper residue will get caught in the bag and not in with my washing, and I can go and hopefully get rid of all of these paper bits. I've got to go start the washing machine. Chris had actually beaten me to it and put the next load on, so in these go. Hopefully I'll get my glue residue off and I can make the rest of these bags up. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.